Okay, it is 4:30 on Monday, May the 2nd, 2022. Notice a special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. Call to order. The BEDC reserves the right to convene to executive session at any time during this meeting regarding any agenda item in compliance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Chapter 551, Government Code. Number 2 is public comment, and I believe we do have a public comment today. So, Richard, if you would like to address the board.
That you relax the requirements that next executive director live in the city of Bastrop. My rationale is twofold. Housing here is quite constrained. And secondly, I think you'd cast a better net. I've presented you with what a radius of a 50-mile and a 60-mile distance from Bastrop would look like, and it would basically cover Austin. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Richard. We do have to take that in consideration when we're looking at that, because housing is, it's just difficult almost everywhere in this state and almost any other state. We have actually talked about that in some of our prior executive directors about where they lived and whatnot. So I believe that we would have a very good ability to be more lax on that when we get to that point of hiring the executive director. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, great. Well, we're going to move into regular business and presentations. It's going to be 3.1. And it's the presentations, discussion, and possible actions regarding the selection of a search firm to hire a new CEO for the BEDC. And I'm going to turn this over to Jen and have her direct this portion of the program.
We're bringing in 2 firms. Johnson and Associates, in addition to Georgians and Consulting. These are the 2 firms that we narrowed down. Each firm is going to do a 10-minute presentation, and after their presentation, we're going to open it up for questions from the board that they may have for these particular firms, and then move on to the next firm, and then from there, basically have a discussion and make a decision, hopefully. So with that said, I'd like to welcome Susie with Johnson and Associates. Susie is here in person. We've got her presentation loaded, and welcome, and I'm so happy that you had an opportunity to join us today.
Well, I really want to thank you all, first off, for inviting us. We're really honored to be here. And I don't have the clicker.
Our agenda today.
But I do need that's it. Okay. Our presentation is about 6-7 minutes, and so I've left time at the end for you guys to answer questions.
Our agenda today is to tell you a little something about our company, something about our procedure, and why you should select J&A to be your executive recruiter. Johnson and Associates is a woman-owned business. 35 years ago, Mom started our company around our dining room table. Today, we are strongest in Texas, but we've worked nationally and internationally as well. A little bit about our team. Chloe Johnson is the founder. She has been the head of 3 economic development organizations. For 17 years, she taught the basic economic development class through Texas A&M, and she is a graduate of Leadership Texas. My name is Susan Long, and I'm the president of the company. I've been matching candidates with communities more than 16 years. I am a professional certified behavioral analyst through Target Training International, and that means that I'm qualified to administer and interpret DISC instruments that we use throughout our process. I will coordinate all aspects of your search, ensuring that we recruit candidates that meet or exceed your expectations. We are unique in the fact that we combine community and economic development experience with strong executive recruitment. With more than 165 executive searches, many of those repeat clients, using methods that are groundbreaking and have been adopted by others, I can tell you the secret to our success is a commitment to improve the world around us, especially rural communities who may not have the resources larger communities do. We kick it off with our initial meeting where key priorities are identified, build consensus among your board members, analyze and benchmark the position using DISC, and develop your executive profile. We do enjoy strong name recognition through our website and our more than 10,000 strong database. Our JA Today newsletter reaches professionals around the world. We maintain our memberships in IEDC, SEDC, and TEDC. Using our network, we recruit the most qualified candidates, evaluate their credentials, conduct telephone interviews, and build a top 10 list. We'll be offering you the opportunity to go through our Team Talk presentation. Using DISC-based assessments, we will help you understand the different basic communication styles, ensuring that we're matching not just skill sets, but communication styles as well. This gives you the ability to compare and contrast your finalists and enhances team building. During our resume preview meeting, top candidates will be presented. We will share their telephone interviews, and you'll have the opportunity to review the 2-minute communication videos showcasing their strengths. We anticipate by the end of this meeting, you'll be able to determine the semifinalists that you wish to interview by Zoom. The Zoom interviews consist of 3 to 5 candidates. We conduct 20-minute Zoom interviews back to back, and at the conclusion of that, we anticipate you will be able to select finalists, and we recommend that you invite their spouses as well for face-to-face interviews. We get busy and conduct a background investigation. We verify education and training, employment history, their FICO scores. We conduct a criminal background search and contact the references they've given us. Additionally, we contact folks in our extensive network. Because of our relationships, oftentimes people will share the unvarnished truth with us, allowing us to gain greater insight into those finalists. And of course, we share that information with you. We use a 2-day interview process. On day 1, it's a very busy day. We start off with an orientation tour that includes the spouses. We have a lunch with board members who perhaps could not participate in the tour. And then we recommend inviting stakeholders to a reception around 5:30 when people get off work. We find that stakeholders really want to be involved in big decisions. In fact, oftentimes board members will hear from the public as to who they believe would be the best fit. We wrap up a long day with a dinner with candidates, spouses, board members, and their spouses, giving you yet another side of your potential new executive and how they interact. On day 2, we recommend starting very early. We give each candidate a 1-hour formal interview back to back with a 15-minute pad in between, a working lunch, and sometime after lunch, depending on how many candidates are interviewed, we anticipate you'll be ready to make an offer. During your interviews, J&A will coordinate the interview schedules, facilitate the interviews, ensuring that you stay within EEOC guidelines. We will assist you in negotiations if necessary, and we will notify the candidates not selected of your decision. So why should you choose J&A to be your executive recruiter? We have experience more than 35 years. We offer exceptional value. Using our extensive network and a proven process, we offer you a 12-month guarantee. Our deliverable: one exceptionally qualified executive director for the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. I want to thank you for your time today, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Can I answer any questions? I think Jen had mentioned how many searches had we done since 2020, was that right?
Yes, how many actually placements have you made in Texas between 2020 and 2022?
I can count on one hand. Coronavirus was not good to us. And in 2020, we didn't work at all. In 2021, I realized we're a small firm. It's Chloe and myself, and then one staff person, and we like it that way. I've only done two. Copper's Cove Economic Development Corporation, I finished in January, mid-January, and we placed a gentleman named Fred Welch there. He's very pleased. They're very pleased. It looks like a match. And then Wednesday, we'll have interviews for the Giddings Economic Development Corporation. The benefit that you have working with a company who's small is you get personal attention, and we're always as close as the phone. You don't have to leave a message. We'll answer it and give your search the attention that it actually really does deserve. It's a big decision for you guys, and we realize that. So are there any other questions?
Let me add on to that. I mean, I think we all recognize that 2021 and 22 was pretty sour for most every business. Everybody had to change. Let's go back a little bit farther than that, okay? So,
Okay.
I mean, let's go with, 17, 18, 19, when things were really popping, things were going good. Can you give us an idea of how many EDC-specific executive directors that you were able to place?
Sure, I'll do my best.
Sure.
I don't have that information in front of me. We do specialize mainly in economic development placements. And in those years, we do 3 to 5 searches a year. So I believe we did a search in Kerrville for their EDC. I'm sorry, I don't have the information in front of me. Yeah, we do 3 to 5 a year. Is about what we do.
Is it your recollection that you placed at least one during that time frame?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, searches, is that the same thing as placement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I
Yes,
just wanna
sir.
make sure
And
I
the reason I
understand
say that is we don't leave your search until we have your executive. You're 1,000% happy, and yeah, we stay with the search until we found the person that you need to hire.
What I can read here is a lot of your stuff is in pretty much this Central Texas area. I mean,
Yes, sir.
it's in this general area, let's say that. If you had to do an educated guess, how many placements have been with people that are in the Central Texas area that were the final candidate versus those that were outside the Central Texas area?
You mean how many people that were actually from Texas that were placed?
Well,
in
yeah, in
Texas?
other words, when you're recruiting, because it's pretty much here in this general area, did most of the people come from this area that you placed, or were a lot of them from outside the area?
We recruit nationwide, and in fact, even internationally. There was a gentleman a few years back that came from Italy that was placed in an executive search that we ran. So, yes, when people see, we maintain our memberships in IEDC, SEDC, TEDC, and when people see jobs in Texas, they apply from within Texas and they apply from outside of Texas. We've placed executives from other states. We've placed executives that came from within the state. It's just sort of a mixed bag.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, ma'am.
Currently, how many active searches do you have going with your staff?
I have one, and I finish it up on Wednesday.
Okay, but, so those are the two that you had, but one in January, you finished, the one that's going to finish up now?
Yes.
And then,
And then I'll be free.
okay.
Yes. Are there any more questions?
I do have one question for you related to, you mentioned international and other states. So do you have other economic development groups contact you from other states to engage your services? So
Yes.
it's not unusual
No.
to bring in agencies from different places?
Right. I guess something that kind of highlights in my mind, we worked for Kindle, which is the Kentucky Network for, it's an acronym anyway. It's Kentucky. They're right next to Indiana, right on the river. And we placed a gentleman from Ohio, of all places, in Kentucky. And he's still there 5 or 6 years later. So, longevity. But yes, we are often contacted by organizations outside of Texas. We're well known. We are. So we've built a reputation over time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes. Yeah, I'd just like to know, given the past couple of searches that you did, give me your assessment on the pool of candidates that you expect.
What, how many?
Or just the qualifications, how do you feel about the pool of candidates that you got for the previous 2 jobs that you ones that you've just finished up this year, and just trying to set expectations for
So the Coppers Cove new executive is an economic development finance professional as well as a certified economic developer with about, 25, 30 years experience. Well qualified. The finalists were all very well qualified. We generally get a pool of qualified candidates of about 15 to 20 who are really have the core basic skill set that you're looking for to lead your organization. But ultimately, it's you guys' decision as to how many, as to what sort of qualifications you're requiring and what type of money you look to pay your new executive. All those things will make a difference in the types of candidates that we attract.
Do you find that your pool shrinks because of the opening in a rural community as opposed to a more urbanized environment?
We specialize in rural communities. We always have from the very beginning of our business. And so, yes, it is hard to recruit for a rural community. We have to work a little harder. We have to make a lot more phone calls, or we don't mind. We understand that the resources are short. We understand that you can't help where you're located. Sometimes it's not on a major freeway, or you're not near a major thing that's happening. We understand that. And so we are just able to, we just work harder for you. Yeah.
Could you define rural for me?
I'm sorry?
Would you define what y'all consider rural?
I would say under 50,000, but it's not uncommon for us to work with, well, like Giddings is what, 5,000?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's not uncommon,
Thank you.
yeah.
How does Bastrop stack up at being rural, but so close
I'm-
to Austin?
You guys, I think, are headed for great things. I think you've got a lot of things going for you. There's a lot of interest in Central Texas area, and it seems to us that a lot of executives are wanting to kind of get into a more rural environment. They're in cities, they're stacked on top of each other, and a lot of folks, well, we find that executives aren't looking for just another rung on their career ladder. They're actually looking for community, that sense of community, great schools, a place to call home and raise their families. And so now rural communities are more attractive for those reasons.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any of the board members?
I appreciate, I was going to tell you page 3, but that may not mean a lot to you. The cost matrix that you did,
Yes.
it looks like you have, it's $18,000 for the base, and then you made an estimate of what the add-ons would be?
Yes, ma'am.
Is how I'm reading that?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
obviously, some stuff, it depends on if we have 8 finalists or 2
Right,
finalists or
exactly.
whatever. So
Yes, ma'am.
it looked like your very best estimate, given the information that you have, is that it would be a total of somewhere around 21,800, just below 22,000 is your best guess at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I reading this correctly?
I believe so.
Okay.
I would have to double check my numbers, but yes, ma'am. And in our contract, we can cap expenses at a certain amount if that makes y'all comfortable.
So if we could do like a not to exceed,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Always, yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
Is there anything else I can answer for you?
Thank you very much for your time and giving us, answering questions that we have for this. It's very
Listen,
good.
I really appreciate your time, and you have my information. You all have my business. No.
Well, I don't, but I think he does.
And I
Okay.
really appreciate all of you and from you, and we'd love to be your executive recruiter.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
So thank you very much. We'll move on to Georgians and Consulting. I believe they're zooming in or electronically coming in through the airways. There we are. How are you, sir?
Hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Wonderful. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So we're going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself and complete your presentation, and afterwards we'll have some questions for you.
Very good. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all this evening. My name is Todd Jorgensen. I am a principal and executive vice president at Georgians and Consulting. I do not have control of the slides, so I'm assuming that someone has either given you the PowerPoint slides or you can see them. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So starting with slide number 2, that just gives you some background on our organization. I'm not going to go through the proposal in detail, as I'm assuming you've seen the proposal leading up to now. So what I'm going to try and do is to hit on really some more high-level components of who we are and what we do, as well as focus in on a couple areas of strength that you need to be very clearly aware of. And then certainly at the end of this discussion, I'll be happy to answer any questions in addition to showing you some examples of placements that we've done in the state of Texas. So as a way of background, we've been doing this business for the better part of 30 years. We focus on economic and community development organizations throughout the United States. We are a very experienced national search firm. We are a search firm that not only is embedded within this space, but we take a very active role in the profession. We are a co-sponsor with DCI International, and that's Development Counselors, Inc., and they do a lot of marketing, communications, and branding, and we co-sponsor with them the 40 under 40 top economic developers in the country, and that is given out every other year. So in addition to not only being very well versed in this space, we do spend a lot of time giving back to the profession and trying to help identify young talent that's out there. The process generally brings in about 300 plus individuals, and we assign a panel of judges that are either economic development professionals, association professionals, and or site consultants, and they evaluate those candidates, and then they bring forward their votes, and they are the ones that select the top 40, and then us and DCI go through a process where we award those at the National IEDC Leadership Conference that generally takes place in January or February. So our national reputation is not only done through executive search, but it's also done through this profession and being very engaged and almost looking at ourselves as subject matter experts within this field and within this space. You know, the name consulting is deliberate within our organization because what we're trying to provide is a very turnkey process that allows a search committee to really hand over the reins to us, but doing it in a very collaborative way. Most of the time, search committees are all very busy with day jobs and they need an organization to lead the process, and that's what we're there to do. So we want to become an extension of your organization and your community and really go out there and facilitate and manage a very professional process. Finally, on this slide, we guarantee our placement. For any reason, if there's not a fit for the first 12 months, we will come back and do the search again at no additional search fee. If you advance to the next slide, one size does not fit all. What this is basically meant to mean is that we do searches all over the country. We do them in small rural communities like Yankton, South Dakota, and big major metropolitan areas, and then everything in between. So our process isn't one that looked at every organization as the same. So what we start off every search by doing is understanding the community, and we call that the needs assessment. We create forums, we gather input, we gather that input from the search committee. We also want to talk with other stakeholder groups that might be important and or involved in the success of the organization, because we find that when you start these searches, it's really important to be very much an inclusive process, as well as transparent, of course, but we want to be inclusive. We want to hear input from all types of community leaders and stakeholders, because these organizations, as you know very, very well, are not successful in a vacuum. They need to work with a lot of different partners, and they need to collaborate within your community, within your county, and certainly within your region. And it's important that we be collaborative in that process. So we gain that input from all these different stakeholder groups, and then we of course give that feedback to the search committee, and that might help adjust potentially the job profile and or the search strategy and the type of candidate that we'll be looking for. So that information is really going to allow us to be impactful in not only marketing and selling your position and your opportunity, but also in evaluating candidates to make sure that we're bringing the right type of talent to your organization that's going to fit today and then of course over the long term. Through our search strategy, we're really going to go out and be very passive in the search as well as very aggressive and proactive. What I mean by passive is that's the marketing side. So that's of course putting up your general advertisements and those things, which of course are beneficial, but we're also going to post it to our LinkedIn account. I get a tremendous amount of views on the LinkedIn messaging that we do, as well as the announcements of the jobs that we're working on. And again, this is just to give folks the awareness that this is something that we are doing. We also send it out to our database of well over, I think we're at 12,500 different folks that are specifically within this space in this industry. And then the important piece is the proactive piece. That's where we are creating lists, if you will, of individuals that we know throughout the country that we think could be a great fit, as well as resourcing, networking, really interacting with people in the region, in the state, and then beyond on who are really good candidates that we might not be aware of. So through that process, we're really going to bring you a diverse candidate pool and bring you outstanding individuals that you will be able to choose from throughout the process. I think it's very important to note that when you're going through a process like this, there's a difference between hiring someone and recruiting someone. When you're recruiting someone, we have to be very much aware that we're not generally just recruiting one person. There's generally a spouse or a partner or others involved in this decision. So it's really important that we understand what their needs are, not only professionally, but personally. So when we bring those candidates to you and you start interviewing them and you start spending time with them, you're going to understand what's important to them outside of just the job. So when you are recruiting those individuals in, we can expose them to things in the community that are going to really help them understand why this is going to be a good fit. Because at the end of the day, this is about fit. We want it to be a fit for you and for them. And throughout this entire process, we're constantly looking at how the individual fits within your organization at a multitude of ways. Finally, the last slide just gives you some examples of placements that we've done in Texas. We've done a lot of work throughout the state, both in regional areas, both in rural areas, single organizations, multifaceted organizations. I can tell you that of the last 3 searches that we've done in Texas since I think it's 2020, all 3 of those placements, I'm proud to say, have been candidates from Texas. That's not to say that it wasn't a national search. And the reason why I bring those up, and that was just so you're aware of, that was the Austin Chamber, that was the Frisco EDC, and that was what's rebranded now as Greater SATX, which is in San Antonio. The focus of these organizations was, we want to do a national search. However, we really want to look locally first, and that's our direction. We always want to start within the community, within the region, and within the state, and then expand to look nationally. So you can compare and contrast really where the best skill sets are for your community and your organization. So it happens that the last 3 searches that we've done in Texas all resulted in individuals coming from Texas to lead those important efforts. As you can see, some of these have asterisks. What those mean is we've done multiple searches for those organizations over the years. Some might have been the CEO and then positions underneath that. Some may have been a CEO or executive director and then another one several years later when that candidate either retired or moved on to a new opportunity. So a lot of our clients not only hire us once, but they hire us multiple times. So I could certainly get into a lot more detail with many other areas, but I'd love to facilitate an open dialogue between all of us. So I'm happy to answer any of your questions at this point.
Okay. I'm Ron Spencer. I've got a question for you. So when I look over your proposal that we have here, I notice that you have a whole lot of add-on costs associated with this, from communicating, advertising, background checks, social media checks, assessment tests. Why would that not be included as part of the actual proposal versus adding the costs onto it?
Those are standard additional costs that come with every search that we conduct. However, with every project and with every opportunity and with every deal, we are happy to negotiate a fixed fee on some of those costs if that's preferable to you. But those are generally very typical add-on costs that you would see on an executive search process. Part of the cost matrix is that you might decide you want to only advertise with one organization, and that might be TEDC, for example. Well, that's free, or it's maybe $150. But rather than saying, we're going to build that cost into the proposal, you can choose however many search advertisements you want to do. So if the number is going to be very large, then that would be fine. But rather than us ramping up the cost for you, it allows you to choose that for yourself. The other costs are of a background check. That's very standard to have a cost for that. And then the social media check is the same. If you would prefer that we didn't do the social media checks, that's fine. If you would prefer that you would do the background check on your own, that's fine too. Those costs are not fixed. You do not have to use them. But I will say the communication cost is fixed. That's a part of every search that we've been doing ever since we've been started. But again, if that's something that you wanted to have put into the actual search fee and then fixed, I'm happy to do that, and we've done that before with other clients.
Okay, I appreciate your answers there. I'm just looking at this thing and looking what other firms have provided as a complete part of their proposals and whatnot. That's why I'm asking the question, because it seems to be a lot of add-ons here to this particular one. Let's see here.
Chair Spencer, may I ask a question? Mr. Jorgensen, this is Mayor Schrader. My question was for the length of time, because over 30 years of experience is certainly impressive. Have you always done your fees based on a percentage of salary, or was there a time that you had a base fee? Has it always been that way, or is that a recent thing?
A percentage of salary is very common within the executive search industry. That is more of the norm. However, we have done fixed fees for clients that would prefer that we do it that way, especially for municipalities. So for example, the city of San Antonio that hired us to do a search for their director of economic development, because it was a city, because it was a municipality, they asked us to provide a fixed fee. That meant that was the fee no matter what, excluding candidate travel expenses. So we sharpened our pencils and put together that process for them. So it really depends on the client and depends on what the client asks for. But when it comes for a standard proposal, which is what we had received from the EDC to put together for you all, that's this. Now, if you want me to put together a fixed fee proposal, I'm more than happy to do that. And we've done that before in the past. Again, it kind of goes to what I said earlier. Every search is different, and we'll tailor that search to our client's needs. So if that's a need for you, which I can completely understand, I'd be more than happy to put that together.
So the minimum fee of the $39,500, we shouldn't read that to be the fixed fee. You would need to come back and tell us what the fixed fee would be.
The $39,500 would be a minimum fee. So it would start there, and we would build on top of that. The search fee is set that way as a minimum because if we're using a percentage and we find you a candidate that, let's say, again, diversity and spread out in compensation range, not every candidate that we bring you is going to be at the max end of the range. Some of them might be at a lower end of the range, and it might be a very strong up-and-coming candidate who, let's say, is only making $55,000 a year right now, and you can recruit them for $80,000. That's why the minimum fee is in there in the event that we recruit in someone that is a lower salaried candidate, because the process and the amount of time and all those things that we spend is always the same. It's not ever less. So that's why we put the minimum in there to protect us when we do have a percentage fee situation.
Thank you very much. And you know, we can all do the math. The $39,500 is about a $131,000 position, and this position has been in the 120-ish range. So that makes perfect sense, and I appreciate you explaining that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you find, Lyle Nelson, do you find that your pool of candidates shrinks once they find out it's a rural community as opposed to a more urbanized environment?
That's a good question. You know, I wasn't able to hear all the previous discussion, and I think you asked about rural. Here's the thing. I'm not sure if I necessarily consider you rural. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get it. You're a sub 100,000 population, but your county population, I believe, is 95,000. The city population is 8,700. You're less than 15 miles from a major metropolitan region. While in some senses you may consider yourself rural, I don't necessarily feel that you're rural. Rural is, in my opinion, where you're sub 15,000 population and you're not within 100 miles of a metropolitan region. You're out truly on your own in that situation. The difference is that you are going to have ancillary benefit and opportunity that's going to feed off of the Austin market. And so when you're within a geographic target like that, to me, candidates that I've worked with would find it incredibly attractive and wouldn't necessarily look at you as a rural community. You know, in reviewing the strategic plan that you did that Garner Economics put together for you, it's very clear in that strategy that you want to see some growth. You want to see some growth in talent. You want to see some growth in product. You want to see some growth in opportunity. And when a community has shown that they're investing in strategic analysis and plans and forecasting and establishing targeted industries, you're not structuring yourselves necessarily as a group that we think we're rural. We think we have the ability to grow, and we think we have the ability to grow in a way that's very sustainable for our community, but also in a way that's very, very positive. So candidates, I don't think, at least the ones that I will be talking to, would necessarily categorize you as rural, because frankly, I wouldn't share with them that you are rural. I think that you are, again, outside of a major metro. You're a very nice sized community. You have a lot of assets going for you. You have a great amount of opportunity. You can really build upon the platform in which you all sit. So I think you can be pulling from candidates from all different types of pools. I would be looking at candidates that are running smaller organizations right now that are ready to scale up to you. I would also look at candidates that are maybe within a metropolitan region that want a different quality of life, that maybe they have a young family and they would prefer to not be in a Houston or a Dallas. They'd prefer to be close to a metro so they can get on that airplane in Austin and be wherever they need to be, or drive into Austin and get some of those bigger feel pieces. But they can have a nice home that's not a very large, condensed, overpopulated, expensive metropolitan environment. You are in many ways in that environment that many, many people I think are looking for. And so when candidates are looking for opportunities like yours, that's really how I would package this position and help them understand that you're more than what some people might think of as a rural population in a rural community. Sorry, that's a little bit longer answer than you really asked, but I think those other pieces are important.
It was a well-rounded answer, and thank you for that. But I think there needs to be a recognition of the resources that are available also within a rural community, of a community of less than 10,000. We certainly recognize the benefits derived from being close to a up-and-coming area, a large urbanized area. But there's also the deficit that also comes with that, and I think we need to be honest with ourselves as well as with the candidate that this is a rural community that's proximate to an urbanized environment. So you've provided me a great answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bill Gossett, I've got a question about how many active searches you contracted or contractively working on currently.
So we currently have 3 contracted searches that we're actively engaged on. One of them, I have a short list of candidates ready for the search committee, and I will be reviewing those with them next week. The other search, we have May 24th as the date. We will have a short list of candidates ready for them. And then the third is not slated to begin until the beginning of June, as their executive isn't retiring until October. So we're putting that together on a timing standpoint. So at the moment, our bandwidth is very strong, and we could easily absorb another project.
Okay. And how many positions have you filled in the last 2 years?
I think it's somewhere around 19. We average anywhere between 8 to 15. Maybe our max is about 20 a year. No more than that. We're a relatively small firm, so we can only handle so many projects. And there will be times when, unfortunately, we just can't do projects because we can only handle a certain amount. But since 2020, it's been 19 projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you, Kevin Plunkett, would you give us an idea of what you did with your previous answer for Lyle? I appreciate that. You indicated you believe should be a good market for this position. Can you give us an idea of how many, let's just say, semifinalists your past couple of Texas openings generated?
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this answer with, I think it's an important expectation level that is always set amongst candidates as well as clients. The market is very challenged out there right now. It's strained. You all see it within your own employment markets, within your community, and within the region. There's been a lot of movement within this economic development space, certainly over the last 5 years, and then really starting in August of 2020, I mean, things just went gangbusters. We almost couldn't keep up. It was so busy. And there's been a tremendous amount of movement that's happened during that period of time. There's been a lot of candidates that have shifted and moved. And when I'm talking about candidates, I'm talking about, qualified, skilled economic development professionals. So in order to really go out and identify those strongest folks, you have to be very proactive in going out and finding them. So the pool of candidates, let's say 4 to 5 years ago, was bigger. There were just more. That pool has actually shrunk down a little bit because a lot of those candidates, again, have recently made moves over the last 24 months. And typically a candidate doesn't want to move within 24 months of their new role. And I generally don't advise that they would anyway, unless there's an extenuating circumstance. So with all that being said, our pools of candidates who we're initially reaching out to are well over 100 individuals. And then that number will drop down. So for San Antonio, for example, I think it was a total candidate pool of around 235, if I'm not mistaken. And that includes people that had applied for it through advertising. But through the folks that we reached out to and all of the lists that we made and people that we contacted, it was well over 200. And then we eventually got it down to a pool that we would present to the search committee of generally about 8. And those 8 individuals will be qualified, we'll resource them, we'll have checked them and made sure that they are very strong individuals and represent themselves in the manner in which you would want them to. And then through your interview process, your first step, you would interview 4 to 5 maybe, and then your final interview round, you're gonna generally interview 1 to 2, and then you'll have your finalists. So your pool of candidates, I would assume, is gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150. But again, until we get started, I wouldn't know what that number is for sure. And one other final point on that, I think it's important that, we all recognize that, the marketplace is challenging, but it's important that we see that the EDC, the leadership from the EDC and candidates see this as well, that this organization, this community is dedicated to this economic development effort. And through this needs assessment process, we're going to help you in messaging that and communicating that with candidates, and then as well being able to talk with candidates about the history of the organization, and much more importantly, about where you ultimately want this organization to go. Because candidates, the pool can be as big as you want it to be. You post it on Indeed and 5 other sites, and you could get maybe 500 different candidates. Who knows? But if the candidates aren't qualified and you aren't able to recruit them, the number doesn't mean anything, because all you need is one. You only need one really good candidate to do this job and to be effective in it. We'll, of course, bring you more than that. But it's really imperative that you all are clear and understand that candidates are going to evaluate you just as much as you're going to evaluate them. And the really good ones, those are the ones you want to go after and get. They need to help understand why this is a great role. And that's, I think, something that has not been mentioned yet, that I believe that we will do an exceptionally good job for you and work with you, because we've worked with some organizations that have been in some very, very challenging situations when we come in and start the search, to the point where organizations have almost been defunded. And those are difficult searches, but if you manage the process correctly, they'll ultimately end up in somebody like a Stephen Moray getting placed at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership when a JLARC investigation was being started by the General Assembly, and they were threatening to actually defund the Virginia Economic Development Department. 5 years later, they won HQ2, and the last 2 years in a row, they've been the top state for economic development. So things are challenging in the moment, but if you manage it and handle it correctly, you can come out on top. And that's, I think, a space in an area that we do exceptionally well, and an area that we could, I think, excel in for you.
And what would you expect the time frame to be if we were to start tomorrow, let's say?
Total end-to-end is going to be somewhere around 3 to 4 months.
All right, do we have any other questions from any other board members? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time and giving us your presentation. We really do appreciate it. I believe you've answered all of the questions that we have out here. Do you have any questions of us?
No questions at this time. Again, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to present Georgians and Consulting, and I thank you so much for considering us. And I would very much like to be involved in this process, and I hope you see that we're a qualified firm. And quite frankly, I hope you accept our bid, and we can work together with you. I'd very much like to do the project. And finally, I thank you all for your time and energy and effort that you're putting into not only your community, but to this economic development organization as well. So again, thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Any other discussion points that anybody else would like to bring up or talk about? Okay, well, I guess it's time we should entertain a motion then.
I'll be happy to make a motion. I'm going to make the same motion I made 2 weeks ago. We go with a local company then and recognize the cost benefit. So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, excuse me. We're going to just talk about that in the motion.
So the motion is to talk about it then? Yeah.
That wasn't going to be my motion, but I'll
Again, please.
My motion is to approve Resolution R 2022-007, approving the BEDC engage Johnson and Associates as a search for a candidate for BEDC executive director position.
So, let's, okay, so let's have discussion on that motion.
I think he needs a second before
Oh,
you.
you're right, sorry. Anybody want to second that?
So I'll second that.
Okay. Let's discuss this then. We have a second, let's discuss it. Jen, you have anything you'd like to bring up on this motion?
While I understand that there is concern regarding the dollar differential between the different firms, I believe, in my opinion, that Georgianson actually brings more to the table in terms of their relationships. the types of recruitment process that they undergo. They do have experience placing individuals here in Texas and successfully placing individuals in Texas. In addition to that, it is a full-service agency. What I mean by that is if you look through the proposal, they're actually making the appointments with the candidates, arranging their travel, ensuring that those aspects are taken care of. Due to the nature of the leanness of our staff within the EDC right now, that is an additional burden that is going to impact the staff. So that's my opinion on the matter.
I mean, if I assess where they are, in particular with the motion of Johnson, I would have expected a formal presentation by them to do that here, not a 7-minute infomercial that essentially pushed play. I would have really liked to see a little more interaction between their leadership. That's why we invited them here. Secondly, they've had a very limited number of placements in the last 2 years. I know that COVID has been an impact on that, but obviously a much more bigger impact on Johnson. And the fact that they actually have nothing more in the pipeline other than, in a sense, waiting for, I guess, our choice is kind of an indication to me that they're a little bit, maybe a little bit lean on their depth of reach in terms of a go-to organization. So that's a little more concerning to me with what I learned in this presentation. Contrary, when you look at Georgians, they were here, they were presented, looks like they're active in 19 placements or so versus 2 in the last 2 years. That's a huge difference in terms of grouping and access in terms of a go-to firm for people looking for jobs. They'd go to the bigger firms trying to get things filled. I like the openness and the presentation that was presented by Tom about the situations, and they look at it as a challenge and a communication opportunity for what we have here to sell forward. So from my point of view, Johnson, I think, missed the opportunity today to present themselves well.
All right, well, I'm sorry, Mayor.
I would like to point out that for one thing, I think they're both qualified firms or we wouldn't be interviewing them. And I appreciate the fact that we started with 5 and we've narrowed down to 2. So they were qualified firms or they wouldn't have been on the list, and I appreciate Ms. Wall doing the research and pulling the people forward. One of the comments, Ms. Wall, that you made at the last meeting was that some of the smaller firms nickel and dime you, but I thought we were going to do a side-by-side comparison, but it appears that they both have a base fee and about 7 add-ons. So that seems to be fairly consistent. When I look at the placements, when I think of Giddings and Coppers Cove EDC directors, that seems pretty much the kind of person that we're looking for, as opposed to Jorgensen. And the 3 placements that he called out was the Greater San Antonio, Frisco, and Austin Chamber. And those are, Greater San Antonio has 24 employees. So I think that by definition, when it's a lot bigger job and they're making a lot more money and they're going to have 24 people working for them, it was interesting that he said the base amount of work is the same from job to job, so there's a minimum that they would have to cover, and that minimum was $39,500. But I think it's equally interesting that if you're recruiting someone, whether they make 180 or 210, it's been the same amount of work, but they want 30% of that salary. And I think that we have, his example of an organization that was potentially losing their funding. This is an organization that is funded by a 0.5-cent sales tax. And I'm not trying to be ugly, but if we have like the A+ best executive there is, the funding is a 0.5-cent sales tax. It's not like that's going to be raised to 3/4 of a cent or a full cent. We aren't a startup business that somebody's looking to take it to the next step. It's a half-cent sales tax for a community that I think we are the most unique, not really rural and not really urban. There are not a lot of less than 10,000 population communities that are a 25-minute, 20-minute drive to an international airport. Our location on Highway 71. I think there's a lot of things about it that are unique, but you also don't move here and go see the ballet at home. You would have to travel to Austin to, so there's kind of a rural nature about it. But the best that I could do was looking at, obviously for Johnson and Associates, it was quite a bit easier because they started with an 18,000 and they confirmed that they would be like around a 21.8, and Jorgensen had a basis of 39.5 regardless of salary, and the consultant travel, you're paying for them flying from North Carolina. And I just did a quick, what's a round trip North Carolina to Austin, because, just assuming maybe they'd come to Austin to interview folks, and that's a $400 flight, and you haven't stayed in a hotel yet. So I didn't want to be unfair, but their add-ons, we were at $42,940 plus travel. So it's not, if they were really close, it would be, but I think that we have a fiduciary responsibility. They're both mentioning TEDC, SEDC, IEDC. Johnson and Associates has placed people in a very similar position and have done that successfully, looks like twice in the last 6 months kind of thing. So that's why I seconded the motion.
Can I rebuttal that? So related to the information about the placement in different sizes of communities, I believe Jorgensen actually indicated that they placed individuals in small and large communities. He was very specific about stating that. Related to the comment on the difficulty of the one position, I think he was alluding to the difficulties that Bastrop has experienced recently related to the Economic Development Board and individuals who are looking into any of the latest news related to what was happening with the board. That may dissuade an individual from considering a position like this. So the message I was hearing was along the lines of, we've handled a situation like this in previous accounts, and we can tackle that accordingly to ensure the fact that we get the best representative for the community here. I do agree with your assessment and Jorgensen's assessment that we are not a typical rural community. I do believe that we need to really step up in terms of what we're looking for in the role of this EDC ahead. And the reason for that is more because of the fact that we are growing. We have unique qualities and attributes to this, to the city that would be very appealing to certain types of individuals who are coming on board, but they must have the skill set in order to capitalize on that. And I recognize the fact that some EDC individuals have large staff members, 24 members or whatever, but again, the expectation is that the EDC staff will grow. And in fact, we have headcount that we want to grow into to continue to build, evolve, and offer even more. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I appreciate that. The only reason that I was specifically referencing Greater San Antonio, Frisco, and Austin was because those were the ones that he referenced, and those are the ones that have been in Texas lately. So I wasn't trying to imply he had never done rural. I was just using the same references that he used for Texas.
I'd like to put in my 2 cents here also. One thing I think that I really saw a real difference in style and sophistication, polish if you want to call it, but I do believe that the answers that we got from Jorgensen were, I guess, a higher level, a better level of answers, a better level of folks that they've been working with, and it's not to be downing on anybody else, but I think when we're looking for somebody in a very tough, very hard environment right now, I mean, we all know it's going to be difficult to find somebody in this environment. And by going outside of where we would normally go, I would think, especially in today's market, we need top firms to take a look at what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And I personally got a real distinct feeling that Jorgensen was just a higher level. They just play at a higher level than the Johnson folks do. And it is more money. I get it. Look, I love saving money. I do it for a living. But I also, you know, I just feel that it would be a better choice if we were to go to a higher-end firm to get the folks that we're looking for. And I realize that we have to have a fiduciary responsibility of spending money, but I also look at a lot of stuff that we spend money on too. And this is super important. We have to get this done. We have to have the right person here. And we have to do it very quickly. So that's just my 2 cents there.
I agree, Ron. I don't have an issue with I call them the larger firm, Jorgensen. And they place people in much bigger cities than this, bigger than Austin. But I don't think we can look at ourselves as a small community. I don't think other people would. I think somebody who's, you know, talking to these search firms like that one, you know, is there any opportunities in Austin? Well, not at the moment, but here's a great place that you could call part of Austin. I mean, trust me, there's not going to be an open mile of ranch land between here and Austin in the next 5 years, I don't think. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this one. On the one hand, I believe we, with Johnson, I think we're most likely going to get the candidates that, the same candidates that were there for Copperas Cove and Giddings, I would imagine. So of course we get the ones that they didn't pick. I do believe Jorgensen would give us would cast a much wider net. But is it worth twice as much? You know, and that's the question. And that's what I'm struggling with. And because on the one hand, yeah, it's twice as much money. It's essentially, you know, $22,000, $23,000 that we wouldn't have to spend. But on the other hand, if we fail, we're going to be doing it again. And most of us have been there and done that with this particular position. So that's what I'm milling over right now.
One thing that would be worth pointing out is that the last search that we didn't have a firm, and the last person that was placed was a large firm. It was a Jorgensen type level firm. So you don't always have a guarantee just because you go with the bigger firm. They both said a 12-month guarantee. And I think she pointed out that the person that they placed at Copperas Cove has 25 years experience and has all the credentials. So the quality of the candidate, this board sets by setting expectations of who you're going to find.
Just a question, and again, this is not to be meant as a disparaging remark for any city or anything, but Copperas Cove and Giddings wouldn't you agree that they're a little bit smaller than, they're a different community than what we are? They don't have the closeness to a major metropolitan area like we do, and they're just not really, they're not like Bastrop. They're kind of smaller. I would say even more rural, and especially for Giddings. So if, going on to what you know, Kevin said earlier, are we going to get leftovers from what they just picked? I don't know. This is tough. I mean, I realize this is a tough decision here. But, Lyle?
Copper's Cove population is 32,715, just for, I just Googled it, so. Do you represent Copper's Cove? Yeah, and Mr. Zeck is their legal counsel. Your cities, yeah.
I can appreciate the proximity to the Austin area, but we're not Austin. We're relegated to a fixed area because we're not able to annex anymore. We are a community that has a half-cent sales tax that is that's going to go to the benefit of the city based upon what the city has to offer, based upon what we as a community have to offer, not what Austin has to offer. We can derive the benefit from being close to Austin, but also will never ever contribute to our EDC process that we have going here. I also have some concerns that the placements that he had listed up there in the state of Texas were all urbanized or metropolitan areas. And I think there needs to be a recognition that we are a rural community, and the benefits of the rural community are many in there. That's why people move out of the Austin area, is to move into a rural area and still have proximity to goods and services that may or may not be available in the urbanized area. So we have a win-lose situation there, is that we're near Austin. We're competing with Austin to a certain extent, but we need to retain our uniqueness. I like the fact that the smaller company, as has been described, specializes in EDC, and they seem to specialize in smaller communities, which I think is advantageous to us to have somebody that talks rural. And I also am concerned about the double in pricing between one or the other, because I think we do have a fiduciary responsibility. This is public funds, not private funds.
So I think we're all aware that this is public funds, and you know, I'm going to kind of add on to what Kevin said again. This is a tough one. If we don't do it right, we're going to do it again. It's a weight here. Yes, it's more money. Do we get better service for more money? Do we not get better service for more money? I mean, it's a real tough one. I mean, that's where we are. So is there any other discussion?
I have one other comment. I would hate to equate efficiency with cost. Just because it costs more doesn't mean they're better in any way, shape, or form. I know that's not what you were suggesting, but it's something that we need to take in consideration. When at a higher cost, are we expecting a wider net? I don't see, in reading their packages, a wider net. In reading the two packages, I didn't see a lot of variations between the two presentations in the package. To Bill's point, I was disappointed in the presentation, but I was going more on their proposal than I was on the presentation. I think that was a filler, and I also think that the message from Todd was also a filler, but the main focus that I have is on their proposal.
Okay.
Just one
Well,
thing.
go ahead.
Comparing and contrasting the firms, and there's plenty of contrast. But Jorgensen, I would be concerned if, when I think Bill asked about how many active searches now, and they said 3, I believe. You know, if he said 7 or 8, I'd be like, we're not going to be the front interest. That's all.
19 plays,
yeah. Yeah, that's good batting average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's state that again. Johnson & Associates had 2 ongoing searches between 2020 and 2022, where Jorgensen had approximately 19. So that's just data points. That's all it is. It's just data points, something to consider. I mean, just being very honest here, I was not necessarily impressed with Johnson as far as being able to answer the questions in their presentation. I was a little more impressed with Jorgensen, but that's just me personally, right? That's just And it's, again, it's a tough one, but here we are. So we're going to need to go ahead and finish this motion. And I guess we need to see all those in favor of going with Johnson and Associates, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Aye. Okay. Well, then we're going to need another motion then to,
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution R 2022-0007, approving the BEDC engage Georgians and Consulting as a search firm for candidates for the BEDC Executive Director position.
okay, we need a second.
Second that.
All right. Well, we have a second on that one. So all those in favor of going with the Jorgensen recruitment firm, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, it's 5 yes and 2 no. So the motion carries to go with Jorgensen. Okay, having finished 3.1,
I have one comment, and it's
Yes,
with
ma'am.
respect to the search, and Mr. Zeck may be able to help us with this. I realize that, in fact, I realized just last week that Director Wall has never had a full-time EDC director since she was appointed last October. The Jorgensen proposal, and what I'm bringing up is we didn't ever do a real complete what was the limits of the search firm and what their responsibilities were, and the Jorgensen proposal kept referring to sending the resumes to the search firm, and the only reason that I'm bringing that up is that there are some of us, not everybody, but some of us have been through with search firms, and what we have always done before is those resumes come to all of us, all 7 of us, and that is certainly my expectation, and I just wanted to have clarity that I don't believe this board has authorized the search firm to be a first pass through resumes. I think that's the intention of the search firm that we've engaged. So when there are resumes to look at, I'm wanting to confirm that the expectation is that all of the board gets all of the resumes and is a part of that process.
All of the resumes? or-
Absolutely.
The resumes
He
that they
anticipates
pass
at least
on.
100, so yeah.
Well, but what he said was that he would get 100 resumes and that they would narrow it down to 10 or 15,
Right.
and that's what they would pass on. So I'm expecting to get the 10 or 15.
Okay, okay, so you don't want the
good.
100, then you want the 15.
No, if we were going to look at the 100, we wouldn't need the
No,
search
no,
firm.
I was
My
listening
only
to-
point was that the search committee, in my understanding, the search committee is now dissolved because we have a search firm.
Right.
That's
Well,
what I'm
actually,
trying
you
to
have
clarify.
so the whole board is the search committee.
Thank you for
Yes.
clarifying that.
So with that in mind, so that, for clarification, we don't want to see the 100, we want to see the
Yeah,
15, and then from the
absolutely.
15. Okay.
What the clarification is, there is not a subset of this board that's going to get information that the rest of the board doesn't get.
No, ma'am, not at all.
Is that okay, with respect to it was just with respect to their
Everything's fine.
proposal?
Everything's fine.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.